than 100 whiteboard problems that had test results writing on them or some kind of pressure on them. So I've had my time in front of a whiteboard. I've done my due diligence. And so I figured I could bring this because this is a piece of my skill set that seems to be something that a lot of people struggle with, because those whiteboarding interviews are nerve-wracking, even if you're good at them. Everybody's got that, oh crap, I hope I can do this moment. And so
whiteboarding sucks.
You know, the truth is, once you've practiced it enough, it actually doesn't get that bad. And if you make it into a strength, when you get there, you can do the confident thing, and you know by the end if you're going to get the job. Because generally speaking, once you get there, there are so few people that are good at it. People are really impressed when you know what you're doing and can actually do it. So that's the hard part is getting there. You do have to do a few things, and I'm going to give you a few tips that if you practice will give you either the illusion of confidence or actual confidence. We can pretend. You don't actually have to be confident, but they have to think you're confident. That's the key there.
Well, that's dangerous in itself. There is such thing, you know, Dunning-Kruger is not a great thing.
So in an interview, confidence is really good. In an interview, in a first impression, confidence is actually kind of an important thing, because they want to know you can solve their problem. And a confident person who's willing to ask questions and ask questions confidently, that's who they're looking for. So let's get on to introduction, since we've just done one. So what to remember about introductions? Number one, always remember that person wants to hire you. They are not spending their time on someone they don't think they can hire. Right? Time is worth money. They are putting time into you, which means you've already almost won. Right? They are rooting for you, and they want to hire you once you get to the whiteboard. Second, be friendly and professional. I've only run into this one or two times where people start talking about their families. This isn't the time. That's after you get hired, you start getting to know them more personally. And the last one is something people don't realize. Get them talking. Don't play 20 questions, but if you can get them going, they'll remember it as a better interaction than it actually was. Because we all love ourselves a little bit, especially our pet projects. So if you can get them talking about their pet project and not your pet project, they're really going to like buy into that, because they're like, that guy was so into that thing that I really like, you know? And that is a huge takeaway. Another one I almost put on here is, when I'm whiteboarding, the last thing I care about is getting it right. Because how many people do you think can get the right answer on a problem they've never seen before that's technical? What are the odds on that? They're very low. They're very low. For a technical problem you've never seen before without the internet, you're not going to get it right if you've never seen it before and you've never seen anything like it. And very few people get right. If you're interviewing for Google, get it right. But basically, other than that, you've got some big leeway here, because not very many people are going to get it right. And the ones that do might be so off-putting that they still don't hire them. Because the goal in this is you're looking for the ability to communicate, the ability to break down a problem, and if they ask questions. That's a huge deal, because if they don't clarify, that's worse. If they get it mostly right without clarifying, but they miss something they could have easily clarified, that's way worse than getting it wrong because they didn't know how to do it. Again, because people who are hiring, people who are watching, understand, in a real world, I have Google. I have all these resources that I don't have right now because I'm standing at a whiteboard and I'm nervous, and they get that. So we're going to start with, this is an acronym. I found it useful, although I don't follow it exactly. It does give you a good pattern to follow. And the key I want to pull from this is have a pattern to follow going in. And if it doesn't fit your pattern, try to keep it on track. We'll go to some prompts, but if the problem doesn't fit your pattern, turn it a little bit and make it fit your pattern so you can confidently go through a few steps. Because if you're confidently following steps, you're looking good the whole time, right? And as long as those steps show that I'm logical, I communicate well, and I ask the right questions, I'm winning. even if I'm not getting to the answer as fast as I would like, and even if I'm nervous. And that's how we pretend to be confident, because I may not know how to do this problem, but I do know how to break down a problem, and I can have confidence in, okay, I know the first thing I got to do. Have confidence in the step, do the step, then the next step. And if you get lost, ask lots of questions. Confident questions are huge, huge, huge in this. So let's go through this. Restate. So Reacto, this is something they teach a lot of people in code camps, okay? And I'm going to tell you a few stories about this, because I've interviewed for us, and I've interviewed for Family Search before. And I've seen quite a few interviews, and I've seen a few really good and really bad whiteboarding interviews. So the first one, restate in your own words. If you solve the wrong problem, that's worse than not solving the problem at all. Because I'm not asking, because again, as an interviewer, and you being if I'm the interviewer, I know that you're nervous, but you need to make sure that you've communicated well, because that's a huge deal, especially in our line of work. So restate it in your own words. Then the next one is one of the biggest things for me that helps me start thinking as an engineer. Get some examples of inputs and outputs. There will be something they're expecting to come out and something that is put in, even for weird ones, right? Even for more generic ones, you may only have one input because the problem gives you the input. But expressly write out the inputs and outputs and what shape they're going to be in, because that will really help you start to get into that engineer mode and start building and structuring what steps you're going to take. Because once I know, okay, I'm going to use this as an array, I have a set of tools now available to me that my brain can start thinking through and working through. Even if I don't know the beginning from the end, I know that I'm going to be given an array, or I'm going to be given an object and this is the shape, or a linked list or something. I'm going to have some object, and there are some things about that object that will help me start to sort out what tools I have in my toolkit. Once I've got those examples, I start asking questions, not only about the examples, which is a good one. Oh, I'm supposed to be going through slides. There we go. Examples. There. We got it. So we got the examples, ask questions, clarify things. Do I need to? So one of the big ones, especially a lot of these problems have random in them, just because I like that. Do I need to write my own randomization algorithm? The answer should always be no, right? You shouldn't be pigeonholed. And one of the ways to handle that being pigeonholed is, you know, there are things that you get pigeonholed on. I use that because I get pigeonholed because I think it's fun to write things that make things sort of random, right? Those things you need to ask, do I need to do this? Or can I just assume that there's a random library that I can use? What happens if I get this example and try to think through some edge cases maybe of these things? Even though they're simple, you may be able to find some edge cases. And you need to ask the questions about those edge cases. Some of them will wave their hands at edge cases and say, you know, we're just looking for a generic. We don't want to take too long. We know there are a whole bunch of edge cases out there. Let's just handle this. Other times people say, oh, that's genius. Okay, yeah, put it in. And when you go through that, put it in your examples. These are some good examples of clarifying questions. Asking questions doesn't stop at this step. It starts at this step. The first two steps are you getting your brain to a point where you think you know what you're being asked. This is where you clarify. So the first two steps, I don't normally ask that many questions as I'm trying to think through, unless I need help figuring out what the shape should be of the examples. Those two first questions are me getting where I'm at, and then I ask questions to make that where they're at too, so that we're on the same page. Another thing I always say is, when you're doing these things, always write them. Rewrite the problem in your own words, different words than it was given to you. And write out the examples, and then ask questions to make sure that you've got it right. And the reason for that is you'll hit a lot of those rough spots that you might find by doing that. You'll find they'll give you some hints on what solutions it actually gives some hints on solutions as well. Because when you do examples actually should include your output too. Right? Sorry, I can't highlight things in this. So these outputs are important too, right? So you're going to ask, so I do this, so I've got this, I do the action and my output looks like this. And so you should have the ability to take your example and run it through whatever process you pseudocode or code, depending on the interview. And at the end, it should look like your output that you came up to in the top. That really helps a lot, especially when you're starting to break down the problem, especially when you're starting to really chew on it. And this gives you time to chew on a problem you haven't seen before. So you're asking questions. Then we go to the code. I would say you should never start in a whiteboarding interview with real code. You should start with blocks of pseudocode. Do broad strokes first, because you don't know how detailed they're going to want you to get necessarily. If you do broad strokes, they may stop you before you implement that thing you're dreading, right? Because there's that one part you're not sure how to do it. But I can say there's going to be a function that does this and move on, and say if they and then if they say, oh yeah, we need you to do that, you go, yeah, I'll get back to that. Let's get this. I just want to get my broad strokes first. Because broad strokes, breaking down a problem in broad strokes is a lot easier than doing the details. And it solves the problem of you get pigeonholed. One of the biggest mistakes we do is we get pigeonholed. We have some pet project or pet problem that we know how to solve well. And so we'll look at the big thing and we'll find the piece we know really well. And I want you to actually avoid that as your first step. That should be a second or third step. And the reason for that is you might go really in depth, way past what they need on that, and never solve their real problem. You've made a really cool random number generator on their board, but it's been 30 minutes and they're ready to go. And they were expecting you to just use a library, right? So that's an important one. And then you broad stroke it out, and then you can go back and fill it out. This part's the longest part. This part, the broad strokes part, is important. Each piece is important. But this part, if you've done the first part well, becomes easier. And this part, you can ask clarifying questions. And if you get stuck, don't be afraid to put a block that is the function that does the part you're stuck on, right? I don't know how to do this, but this function will do this, is actually a valid answer. It's not the best answer. I'd prefer you not have to do that. But it's better than not finishing the problem, right? Saying this part I need to research also shows some self-awareness, right? You know that you don't know how to make a true random generator. So you're just going to put a box here. And if they ask for it, you can talk about how you'd probably look something up and you'd find the best one for the situation, right? That's a really big line between someone who's a little bit more senior and a little more junior. Is the junior people will stop on something they're stuck on and kind of freeze up. They won't be able to move past it. This allows you to move past it. I want big blocks, and if one of those blocks scares you, you can save it to the end. Let your brain turn on it while you do the other blocks. Once you've got your broad strokes, then you fill in details until they say you're done. A lot of people will say you're done far before you think you're done if you do broad strokes and get to the end. Some people will take your broad stroke answer and say, that's excellent. We're good. 15 minutes in and you were dreading that part and you never have to touch it. Which it allows you to keep that confidence. So this part is the longest part. It's an important part. They're all important. Last, you're going to run through, once you've got your blocks, you're going to run through and do step by step. And what I normally do is I'll write it next to the side of what I'm doing, and at each step I'll write what the result is, so that I see a running track through my code of what happened in this block, what happened in this block, what happened in this block, right? And then at the end, if I don't get what I originally had, that's actually a bonus because I can see what block I got what I didn't expect, right? I can start to troubleshoot my own code. A huge advantage if you can troubleshoot your own code on whiteboarding. Because even if you get the wrong answer and you can tell them, I know I screwed up somewhere in here, I'm just not sure where. That says a lot about someone. And in a minute, we'll do this and we'll do an exercise that'll help you feel what the interviewer's doing, because an interviewer, when they see that, doesn't see someone who screwed up. They see someone who's smart, who's trying to solve a problem, and who's working through it in a very meticulous way that they really, I mean, in my experience, the interviewers all like that. All right. The big O notation. Now, sometimes you will actually use big O, but I don't really like using big O as the first thing because everybody's scared of big O. No one wants to figure out how to calculate it. Like, it's something I haven't touched since college, really, in life. The last time I had to do big O notation was in an actual project. I can't think of a time I've actually used big O notation for anything other than a report it was for a report to some architecture people. And it was 2 years ago, right? So we don't do big O notation all the time, so we're not super good at it. So don't worry about big O notation as the first. The real question is your solution any good? What you just coded, is it a good solution? Is it a bad solution, and why? It is okay in a 20-minute interview to come up with a solution that works but is terrible. And if you can say it works, but I'd really prefer to do it a different way that was more performant, and you tell me why it's not performant, I get it. You only had 20 minutes. No one expected you to come up with the performance-based one. Everybody expected you to come up with one that works. Know the pros and cons of your approach. This can be very language specific. I know JavaScript is a scripted language. I normally do things in JavaScript. There are some strengths of scripted languages. There are some weaknesses of scripted languages. If I've got a recursive function in JavaScript, I know I probably should do something else. The reason is in JavaScript, I know that a recursive function holds all those previous recursions in memory at that time. Other programming languages have tricks to not have to do that are more powerful. Recursive functions in, say, C or C# are far more efficient than in JavaScript. And by knowing that little fact about my detailed language, everybody thinks I'm a genius now. I'm not actually a genius. I knew one fact that was applicable. So find something applicable about your approach that you can give a little detail on. It doesn't have to be everything, just a piece that you can give some level of, I do know what I'm talking about on. And point out a specific instance. That's always a good thing to look for where you can. If you can't, just give them a rough overall analysis and say, I think this is good, but I'd prefer to do X better. Right? If you can give details of why and what you would change, that's even better, but it's not a requirement. And the big O is to answer the question, is my solution any good? Okay, so let's go back through these again. Let's just make sure we've got them in our brains, because I wanted to save the bulk of this for an exercise. We're going to turn the table. I'm going to be the interviewee, and you guys are going to interview me. We're going to pick a problem that either I have or haven't solved. There are 3 at the end of this. One I've solved, 2 I have not. And we're going to go through, and I'm going to try in real time to do a whiteboarding exercise. I'm going to be as nervous as you guys would be at a client, because I could really screw this up in front of 30 people. So let's see how this goes. So, and I want you to note some things about how you feel being the person watching and interviewing the person who's nervous, right? Because I'm pretty good at playing off confident, but I will tell you, I'm kind of nervous you're going to ask me something that I can't solve. Let's be honest here. So I'm going to practice React. I'm going to restate the problem whenever we get there. I'm going to give some examples of inputs and outputs. I'm going to ask some questions. You may not know the answers. We all may not know the answers. I will refrain from using Google or any search. You may use Google to answer my questions. And I am going to pseudocode, broad strokes, and we're going to try to pick a problem that has application. I am a full stack developer in JavaScript. We should probably try to pick a problem that has application across the full stack that's not like super language specific. I don't know that I'm going to be doing any linked list stuff just because I'm a JavaScript guy and that's way outside my wheelhouse. I mean, if you want me to, we can all struggle through that together. It'll be painful. So then we're going to test. I'll run my examples through my block of code together with you guys, and we'll put our notes on the side in comment form. And then we'll talk about optimization. I came up with 3. You guys can come up with another one. Let's spend about 3 minutes. And if you guys want to pick one of these, well, let's see. Jen, what do you think? Should we pick one of these that I've already got, or should we let someone volunteer one? First one to come up with a good one goes.
However you want. Secret Santa sounds fun to me.
You want to do the Secret Santa one? That's the one I've done before. So actually,
whatever. No, throw it
I've used that one.
Yeah.
So okay, I'll let you know. Secret Santa I've done. I looked at the other 2. I decided. So I was going to show a video of someone doing this, but then it's really hard to show videos through Google Meet. I found out this morning as I was testing. So this is an audible. So I didn't plan on doing this. So I really haven't looked at the other 2 more than the 15 minutes I took to find them. Or you guys can come up with one that you guys like. Does anyone want to pick one of these or have a good one? We'll just go with whoever wants to answer first.
Jacob, this is Ray. I'll go. Do the last one. That one seems more applicable to just overall development. I don't know how many times I've written a 52 card deck in programming language. So
that's true. The last one is you will see a lot of tables with arbitrary number of columns that you have to handle. Well, arbitrary being arbitrary. Sometimes it's a number, sometimes it's not. I've actually solved this problem in real life a few times, but never in a whiteboarding situation where I was kind of doing pseudocode. Not this exact one, but yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and close this. We've got the table. So this is what the thing says. So first, all right, so I need a table, right? So table. Should we have, does this table need to have headers? I guess it would, right? Because we've got sortable columns and they're sortable on something, that header. So this table has data with keys in it, doesn't it?
Yes.
We're going to go through it. So we got key value pairs in each row. Arbitrary. Does each row have the same number of values, or is it arbitrary within the same table?
I would say it's arbitrary in the same table.
Okay, so some tables will be missing, some rows will be missing keys.
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking questions up front. Write a table with rows, key value pairs. Some rows will be missing keys. Okay. So actually, I'm going to separate this into two questions. It looks like I have two questions here, right? Question one, I need to make a table. And question two, sort. Let's see. I think that covers it. So I have to write a data structure that will drive a table with an arbitrary number of rows where each row can be different. They don't all have the same number of keys. And sorting the table based on a selected key. Okay, so let's think of some examples now. Let's go. Let's do 2 or 3. Days. Let's do. Okay, and then ooh. We're gonna just type in random things. There'll be strings. No. So I think it's best for that. Okay. So I got this. Here I can go. And we'll just change some of these for 9. Does it have to involve dates? I just added dates as I was thinking about it. Have to sort by dates, or is the sort just by characters in the alphabet, basic sort?
Sure, dates would be fine.
Dates will be fine?
Yep.
Okay.
Every column.
Are there any other types of columns you want to see? Because we've got a date. We've got strings. Do we need number columns in here? Is number a valid type?
Yeah, I would do a number 1. Maybe, or if you want, do a Boolean. You know.
We'll do that in a different example. This one's got a date. Let's do example 2. All right. So while I'm doing this, I want you guys to think, do you guys want me to succeed on this? Do you want me to actually get the right answer? You guys are in the interviewer's place right now. Do you empathize with me a little bit and being under this much pressure?
Definitely.
You better believe it.
Yes,
You better believe it. There's a lot of pressure here, but there's a lot of pressure in an interview. That feeling's important. I'm just distracting because I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing. I'm stalling because I haven't done this before. So, let's see. What's an item?
Jake, in the comments, Scott Hansen said, "Isn't there one too many commas in the row?"
Nope. Said that there could be empty rows.
Okay.
So that's me representing an empty row. That being said, I mean, I could represent that different ways. And that's actually a good question because, I mean, is that a good way to represent empty rows in the output? If I'm going to do an output like this?
Yes, that would be correct, actually.
Okay, so empty commas. That's an excellent question. I didn't even think of that. All right, and then we've got Boolean. Let's put Boolean in this. Let's do false here. And then these ones don't have any. This middle one is going to have 1, 2, 3. Oh, I do have too many. I need thing 4. So you're right there too. And then this one, we're gonna actually no, we're gonna remove one of these columns. I don't need foo, so it will actually be 3. Nice catch on the extra columns. Thank you. Okay. Got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Can you think of any edge cases I might be missing with this? I've got 2 different sizes of columns. I've got every type that you told me. I've got a Boolean column. I've got false. Any other edge cases you can think of that I'm missing here in these examples?
An entire column being empty.
An entire column being empty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Straight down, completely
I
empty.
think I've got this one here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's a good one. That's actually good.
Yeah, you could have a row that's completely empty.
A row that's empty. I don't have that. Let's do that up here.
Yeah, like where everything is, there's no data. This is actually a real world example that I had to solve for Traeger. If you want, Jacob, I could post you like a real example of what the data looks like that we have. You wanted?
That would be excellent if you wanted to post it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna post it to you directly. Give me one sec while you're doing that.
All right. Would the audience prefer me to use his data or my data on this? I'm just making it up as I go.
Let's use his data.
Okay, so once I get it, I'll throw it in here.
Okay, give me 1 sec. All right, I'll give you 10 rows and then I'll give you the header too as well. They use pipes instead of commas, so.
Okay, that's fine.
There you go.
Yeah.
I slacked it to you.
Excellent. Oh boy.
So this is actual, just so everyone knows, this is scanned data. When a grill comes off the line, they scan a bunch of QR codes and this data gets populated in a CSV file. And what I had to do was write a parser for this and do a bunch of stuff with it. But the pipe is the delimiter on that. And then, all the data you can see up. So they're just like serial numbers is really what it amounts to. And they're all different. There's dates and stuff in there too as well.
Yeah, let's see. For a whiteboarding interview, I might cut this down. Is it all right if I cut this down to be a little shorter so I can handle a little easier by hand?
Yeah, for sure. Take the first 4 or 5.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to leave line because that'll be our ID row.
Yep.
Date's good. Let's take this. So let's keep 1, 2, 3. We don't have any Booleans, but that's okay. I'm going to cut it here. So let's.
The Booleans are at the end. If you wanted one, they have like pass or fail for test, but yeah, whatever you feel like doing.
We'll go to the end there and get that, and just gotta love those keyboard tricks, right?
Yeah.
We'll do these first few rows until we'll go.
You could just do the first set if you want. It don't matter.
Yeah, do that. I'll just add a Boolean row, actually, probably.
Yeah.
Do that, and then. Oh, is that? Oh, I got too far. Okay, we got that. So that's our example we're going to use. Okay. And I'm going to just modify it to hit these. We'll have an empty one here, and then we'll add an empty row at the end. I think I can hit all our examples in one, all of our edge cases we've thought about in one example. I hit this empty row at the end, and then a Boolean one. Okay. I'm using a very mathematically rigorous way of assigning rows, true and false. Every other one. 2, 4. So we got this, it's gone. Also, we're actually going to make this one shorter because we said it could be arbitrary lengths too. So we got one row that's one shorter than the other one. That'll be fun. Okay. So I've got to represent this as, since it's an arbitrary number of rows and an arbitrary number of columns, this is going to have to be an array of lists, I think. That seems like it might be the best data structure. So let's think about this. So I'm going to have an array.
An array of lists is, I mean, or never mind.
Well, no, that's, so what's wrong with an array of lists on this?
I guess I'm just confused by the terminology being put together. Aren't the words array and list like interchangeable?
It depends on your language.
In JavaScript at least.
So it depends on your languages, because some people separate arrays as being indexed by numbers, whereas lists are indexed by a key. Right, that's the key.
So a list is a key value store.
Well, a key value store, and I might be using my words wrong. That might be something I did wrong there.
Actually, that'd be a map, wouldn't it?
Yeah, map, an array of maps. That's, I said the wrong word. Good call.
Or dicts.
Yeah. So I'm going to make this, I think this is the best structure to build this. Now, when I get out of this, I'm going to have to pull the keys to make the rows. I'm going to have to keep the data in it. So I have the reason I'm using this and not a JSON object where it's a general object is I need to keep order matters, right? And so the rows have to match up and order matters. That makes it really tricky if you've got a missing value or a row with the missing value that doesn't have that key there. Let's say this one actually doesn't have a key here. Okay, so that means that it would have to skip a column in that case, right? Okay. So now I've got to write something that's going to take this and display it as that. So I've got a set of keys. I'm going to write a function. And it's going to take in, this object. Right? More or less, we're pseudocoding here. I don't need to know exactly. It's going to take an object that looks kind of like this. And I need to first, what do I need to first do? Let's see how I'm going to format something that looks like this. I need to, loop through the object. And I need to create the column row. So let's loop through and create the column row. So create column row. I'm going to make that a block right now. Yeah, we're just going to go broad strokes here. So create column row. I'll do that later. So first I need to create the column row. Then I'm going to go through and once I've created it, that gives me the ability to loop through and actually make each row into a string. Right? Because I know what order to put things in once I have the key value pairs. So can I just create a string after that? I think I can. I think I can just create a row string, and then combine. Okay. So first, I think I'm going to create the column row, and then I'm going to use that to create the strings underneath, right? Because I have to loop through it. Yes, because if I don't loop through it once, I might miss some keys, and the order will get messed up because the first one might be missing something. So let's say this first one is missing this right here, right? So the first one looks like that and doesn't have a key for that. I'm going to have to handle that by having the rows known, the columns known in advance so that I can line things up correctly. Yeah, I think that's the order I need to do things in. All right, so let's dig into this create column row. What's the create column row look like? I just saw a message. Let's see, what was it? Sorry, my mic doesn't work. Did I miss getting on the same page about arbitrary number of columns means? That's a good question. I think I did ask that. Is it does each column have every key? There was a miscommunication, maybe. So, audience, who is my interviewer, is it a different number of rows? Is that the only problem, or do columns actually have missing keys? Or does every column have all the keys? It's an arbitrary number of rows. Each row can be arbitrary sized, which makes me think you could be missing any key. But is it missing keys? That's why I kind of said that second. It doesn't say arbitrary number of rows. That's true. And could it have as many rows as we want? Is there a limit to the number of rows? I don't know that I'm going to, if it's an object like this, I think it's easier to do in the arbitrary case than trying to have a factual number, because I'm just going to loop through each object in the array. So I don't think the whether or not the rows are arbitrary affects my solution. Okay. So, audience, can a row be missing a key, or does it just have a different? I see that being the only way you could have a different length, which is why I asked that question.
Let's say yes.
So
yes, it can be missing a key. Yeah.
Okay, so I will have to account for that, and that's why I have to do the column row, and I can't do it all in one loop. I'm going to have to do 2 loops to find the keys first, and then loop again. There might be a fancy way of extending it.
It's a lot of loops. It's a lot of loops.
It might be a place to optimize later. We'll see. Have to look at it. So we're going to create a column row. We're pseudocoding, so we'll just do let's see. So we got table data. I'm going to go table data dot. Well, I'm going to use .map, but we should do loop through table data. I'm a JavaScript guy, so I went straight to map because I know that's how I do it in Java. But so for item in, that's a little bit more generic, right? Because it's not, I don't know how many languages have a .map. Call it row. I need the list of keys. And I'm going to make it an array, I think. Best way to do that? Yeah, I think so. List keys is an array. Do you want me to go into details about how I would go through and check for each key and has keys, loop through keys, and put them into the array of strings? Or is it cool to just leave it there?
No, I trust that you can do that.
Cool. All right. List of keys is an array. Then I need to take the superset of all arrays. So it's not quite list the keys of his. Well, first we'll just do, yeah, var array. We'll do a little bit more generic. Keys equals renew array. Do that. That's easy enough. List keys in array.
Hey, Jacob, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, of course.
When you're whiteboarding, do you typically, I mean, I'm assuming you try to do things like language agnostic to solutions. If the role specifically says we're looking for a Java developer or a Python.
So I still recommend going somewhat language agnostic because you're just giving them another nitpick on you, right? If you're building something a little bit more language agnostic, you don't have to remember keywords without your IntelliSense, right? So
Okay.
you should give a rough estimate and say we're going to go JavaScript-esque, but I reserve, like saying something like I'm going to go JavaScript-esque, but I reserve the right to just write in things that I don't remember from IntelliSense, because everybody gets IntelliSense, right? When I'm actually coding, I am not coming up with all these keywords straight from my brain. I'm coming up with a lot of them. I have to get close enough that I can get there. Most people are okay with that. There exist people that are looking for really, really strong people in a language that will care, and they'll let you know. They will let you know we'd like it written in JavaScript. But I would ask, is it okay if I do a pseudocode that's JavaScript-y? So I'll use mostly JavaScript, but I might pseudocode some things just to make it faster. That's a good way of putting that question. And that's an excellent question. I normally try to be a little bit more language agnostic. And again, the reason is that way there's nothing to nitpick on about, you know, you used a var instead of a const there. That might act, now if they're looking for a JavaScript guy, that makes sense. That's a good thing to do. Use const, use var. If you're not a JavaScript guy, I'm trying to make this language agnostic because I know we have a swath of people from across languages here. So it's a case-by-case basis. But I do tend to be a little bit more generic so that there's not the nitpicky. And if they want it nitpicky, they'll let you know.
All right.
So if we need to loop through the list of, actually, let's think. List of keys, and then we're going to loop through the list of keys. So we're going to go. This is the most efficient. We're going to do that. Okay, and this is another place where I'm running into some stuff because in order to keep the continuity of each column or of each row, I'm going to have to split that array at that place and insert the key where it goes, right? For key in list, I need index. Yeah, this is going to have key. This is going to have an index. It might be easier to do this as I collect the keys, actually. Well, we'll for index of key in list. Because if I keep order, is there ever a case where they're going to be in a different order? Because if that happens, it might break everything because I don't know what order to put them in.
I'd say no.
Okay.
It's specific order.
Cool. So then I'm going to say split array at index and insert key. Right, because that way, let's see, if the array is smaller than me, I'm going to split at each place, and then the next row is going to come along. Yes, I think that'll work. Can you see anywhere where that wouldn't work, where I get as long as they're always in the same order, where I get the wrong length of the array at the end. I don't think there is. Because if they're always in the same order, when I hit it, I need to spread the array of things. And then I'm going to save it to keys. Split array. So, and then keys into that. And then since arrays in most languages are passed by reference, that would actually work. If we're in a language that's not, I might go a little bit deeper, and I might actually talk to them about, so can I assume that keys is going to actually modify the object and the parent there, so that when I return it, it'll be updated? That's what I would say here. And then we're going to cut out of here and return keys. Would you like me to go into more details of how I'd split the array? I feel like this is a common thing that people do, and I just normally Google that and just plug in either a quick piece of library or have some function from the language do that for me.
I think we're okay to skip that.
Okay. All right. So that goes here and create column row. And so now I've got a row of columns. Now I need to create a string. So this one's going to have stuff come in. Okay, so it's going to have object come in this shape, and then it's just going to create a string that matches that. Awesome. So we're going to create the row string. Row string. And the same thing, I'm going to get table data in. Table data, string, equals how did we have it formatted in this? No spaces around the bar, so item bar. Right, did we get another message? I'm sure I messed up camel casing. I'm guessing I do it all over the place. Let's see. I'm not going to worry about it because I want us to have time to do a wrap up on this and talk about it. So we're almost out of time here. Okay.
Chris Morton has raised his hand. So.
Oh, is that what it is? I heard something. I didn't know what it was. What's up?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt until you were ready. You had mentioned something that I do myself that I'm not seeing you doing, which is commenting your results as you go, your expected results. Do you do that specifically as a comment, or is that just through naming convention?
I do that as a comment, but I do it after I finish the process.
Oh, okay.
I want to go through this one more time before we're done. Like, as I'm doing this, I do that as I finish. And the reason is I want to walk through it again to see if I missed anything.
Okay, so you don't use it necessarily as a thought process to keep your flow going. For you, it's more of a double check at the end.
Yeah, and that's personal preference.
Okay.
As long as you're doing it, I don't think I as an interviewer, I didn't care. But I did want to see you go through and watch each piece and do it. Yeah, no, I keep it in my head. That's honestly flavor of the week. No one's going to care too much how you keep track of it.
Awesome, thank you.
Let's see. So we got this. And notice something else about something. I'm actually quite good at these interviews, and notice my code is actually sloppy. Even being good at this, I'm going to be sloppy. And the reason is I want to focus on getting the right answer. I'm a lot less focused on getting everything precise. I'll go through again and fix that. And they'll stop me and they'll say, we've got a good idea before I do that most of the time. Now, that might just be one of my weaknesses. I don't know, but it's seemed to pan out for me personally. All right, so we got the result, and then we're going to do string with new lines. Actually, no, it's not item in data table. I need data table, and I need the column row. Item in column row equals oh, interesting. Okay. Item in table data. Do that. So as I'm going through this and thinking about it, we would have caught that on the second time round, but I figure I just caught it again now, so I can do that. It will be item I'm going to assume that item column can be null or empty, and it empty works in this case. So is that a fair assumption that if item column comes up undefined or something, it's not going to throw blow chunks in this instance? Maybe I'll put a little comment here. May need to check for EX. Need to check for existence first. Spelling. It's a wonderful thing. And on this, I actually have a spell checker on a whiteboard that would have been spelled wrong. So some people will hold that against you. That's actually a thing. Some people don't like the sloppy stuff. So practice makes perfect. But if they're really going to hold spelling against you under the gun, you probably don't want to work there anyway. Let's be honest here. That's a sign of a culture that's a little bit too nitpicky. Go for it.
Can I add to this? So, like many of us, I've been a computer nerd since I was, 10. Basically, computers have been doing my spelling since I was 10 years old or so. So I'm not the greatest speller in the world. When I'm whiteboarding, I make a point to abbreviate things as much as possible.
To do that. I used to do that, and then I moved out so that I could read it later because I'm going to come back through it. And in the back through, if I had forgotten an abbreviation, it would take me a while to get my place again. So again, it's all personal preference on that. And I honestly think it's fine both ways. I think you can't go wrong on that. Yeah. I started making bigger, longer names, especially since on this one, I know exactly what it needs to do. And I wrote it. I mean, it's not that many things. And notice this, it makes it so this top one, anybody reading this process will understand what I did. Right? A layperson could read this and kind of get okay, first you created something, a row, then you turned it into a string. I guess not quite a layperson, but someone who didn't quite understand what was going on could read the first step. And remember, when you're whiteboarding, your goal is to communicate not to a programming thing, but to the people reading it, the people interviewing you, what you're doing. Your code may work with really abbreviated things, but you do want to make sure you've got enough information in there that they'll get your abbreviations. Because, again, this is a communication thing. It's not for you. It's actually for them. And so I think abbreviations are good. Beware of using abbreviations they can't follow. I'm only going to do the first one because I think we're almost out of time. And so then we're going to just, so the result of this will be passed into this. So column row, and then this last one, I'm going to take in And this is going to return this. Column strings is going to return the result of that. Okay, so now column strings is going to in JavaScript, I do this in a reduce or something, but we're doing a little bit more generic. So we're going to do this because I don't know, depending on your language. This is another place where I would vary in language from language to language, right? Because if there's a more efficient way to do it in my language, I would do it in that more efficient way. But yeah. All right, and I would say that this is a solution to that problem. At this point, I think I'm done. So let's go through and let's plug this in. Let's put in this as I go through. So we've got, I'm going to skip this part because we are out of time. But next I would plug things in, and it takes a long time to plug a table in. So rarely will you see a table in one of these problems, as I'm realizing that. Because I've done tables once and I didn't do them again because they take so long to write in. But I would normally, what I would do is I would go to each one of these rows here and I would comment. So I would go through, and on the side, normally I'm using a whiteboard. In this area to the right, I would go through step by step and write what it looks like after this step, maybe here. And then write what it looks like after this step, and then write what it looks like after this step. A second thing I do when I'm whiteboarding that I don't do when I'm coding on a computer because I have my carriage return. Give yourself space underneath each one. This is where I normally write my examples. Or I'll write this here if I need to keep my flow straight. But make sure you give yourself space where you're not directly coding. And on each of these, give yourself an extra row because you're going to need to correct things. Everybody needs to correct things. So that's the only other tip I'd give you while you're doing this step. You run through it. Now, if I'm going to do my big O notation on this, I know we ran out of time. I'm going to say that this is not the best because I think if I was given more time, I could figure out a way to do it with one loop instead of two. That being said, right now, I don't know that I could. So what do you guys think? In the last minute, did I pass my whiteboard interview? Did I succeed?
We'll see what the other clients do, and we'll get back to you.
All right. You'd be surprised how often that's the answer. So real quick, since we're out of time, this took a little longer than I thought, but I think it worked well. As you were doing that, were you rooting for me? Did you want me to succeed? Was that a positive experience on your end? Were you thinking, I really hope, oh, I want to give him this hint. I want to give him this hint. I want to give him this hint. Did you get that feeling from time to time?
Definitely.
That's what the person interviewing you is you didn't? That's fair. I mean, but that's what the interviewer is feeling as you're doing this. It's not a negative emotion from that interview. It's a positive. They want you to succeed. They want you to do well. They don't want to interview anybody else. They want to just hire someone. They want to be done with this. So, as you're going through your next interview, remember the guy in the other seat is rooting for you. Ask him questions. Give him every opportunity to help you out. Notice as I did it, I was always talking. That's important because notice you guys could challenge me. People chimed in and challenged me. And that is the end of my topic. The other thing I would do is have someone whiteboard with you who has the solution in front of them or a list of solutions in front of them and practice this. Because if you can get someone to do that with you, it really helps your whiteboarding. Because again, the resource is the person in the room and everything else. And that ends my thing. We'll end a minute late. I'm sorry. You never want a meeting to go long. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, that